I pushed open the door to the Carmel coastal villa, suitcase in hand, a gift basket for our 10th anniversary waiting. There was no jazz music, no scent of roasted seafood, just a chilling, unnerving silence. On the dining table, a pale blue note lay casually beneath a smooth pebble. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. Reading the devastating words, "I've gone on a cruise with Sophia. This villa, and Julian, are yours. Good luck." Across the living room, on an old leather armchair, Julian, Lucas's stepfather, sat motionless, his sharp eyes fixed on me. He opened one eye, his voice raspy like distant ocean winds. "Ready, my dear." I nodded, a resolve hardening within me, crushing the initial wave of betrayal. My anniversary, meant for celebration, had instantly transformed into a stark confrontation and the start of an unexpected battle. My life as a passionate painter had felt like a masterpiece in progress, each stroke on the canvas reflecting the vibrant happiness I believed I possessed. 10 years ago, I met Lucas, a charming and ambitious real estate developer, at a bustling art gallery opening in San Francisco. He was captivating, with a quick wit and an infectious smile that made me feel like the most fascinating person in the room. He spoke eloquently about art, genuinely admiring my vibrant canvases and recognizing what he called my unique artistic vision. He encouraged my passion, always telling me to pursue my dreams without reservation. We married a year later in a small, intimate ceremony overlooking the Golden Gate Bridge, a day I remember as bathed in golden light and boundless promise. Soon after, we moved to Carmel, Bethesda, a picturesque coastal town where we found a beautiful, albeit slightly neglected, villa overlooking the ocean. It was an artist's dream, and I eagerly set about transforming the detached guesthouse into my personal studio. I filled it with light, easels, canvases, and the comforting scent of oil paints and turpentine. It became my sanctuary, a place where creativity flowed freely. Lucas often suggested I focus on meaningful personal projects, rather than constantly chasing gallery commissions or portrait requests. He argued it would save on studio rent in the city and allow me more freedom to explore my true artistic voice. His words sounded reasonable, even supportive, and I embraced the idea, believing it would strengthen our bond and allow me more time for our life together. However, subtly, almost imperceptibly, cracks began to form in this perfect picture. My prized art supplies would sometimes mysteriously go missing, forcing me to delay projects. My painting software would glitch at crucial moments, deleting hours of work. And important exhibition invitations seemed to vanish from my inbox before I even saw them. I dismissed these as minor annoyances, technical mishaps, or simple oversight's. Our shared savings, primarily accumulated from my successful portrait commissions and a small cherished inheritance from my grandmother, were all managed by Lucas. He insisted it was for smarter investments in his burgeoning real estate ventures, and I, in my naive trust, gave him full control. I began to notice a quiet unease whenever I brought up the idea of applying for prestigious art residencies abroad or exhibiting in major cities. Lucas would always find a reason to discourage it, often with a dismissive wave of his hand and a reassuring smile. "You have me, Anya. Don't worry so much about the art market," he'd say, pulling me close, and I'd melt into the comfort of his words, letting myself be lulled by the illusion of our perfect life. I was so consumed by the beauty of the life we were building, so focused on painting our shared future, that I unknowingly painted over the growing cracks in our foundation. missing the subtle signs of his manipulation and control. The chilling silence that greeted me on our 10th anniversary felt like a canvas erased, devoid of color or life. There was no sweet scent of the custom-made anniversary cake from our favorite patisserie. No vibrant bouquet of white lilies that Lucas always surprised me with, just that thin, cold note on the dining table, a stark, pale blue against the dark, polished wood. My fingers, usually so steady with a paintbrush, trembled uncontrollably as I picked it up, reading the devastating words again, hoping I had misread them the first time. I've gone on a cruise with Sophia. This villa and Julian are yours. Good luck. Each word was a sharp jab, cutting through the decade of love and trust I had poured into our marriage. My heart pounded, a frantic drum in my chest, as I desperately pulled out my phone. Lucas's number. I dialed, my thumb hovering over the call button, praying for an explanation, a joke, anything but this terrifying emptiness. It went straight to voicemail. I dialed again, and again, each time, the same hollow click, the same recorded message of his cheerful voice that now felt like a cruel mockery. My throat tightened, a painful knot preventing me from swallowing. I sank onto the nearest kitchen chair, feeling as though all the air had been sucked out of the room. I wasn't just tired. I was utterly, completely depleted. Through my blurring vision, I noticed Julian, Lucas's stepfather, still sitting across the living room in his old leather armchair. He watched me with eyes that were too clear to knowing for a man described by Lucas as confused and failing. I felt tears welling up, but they weren't tears of weakness. They were hot, stinging tears of fury and humiliation. How could he do this on our anniversary? My mind, still reeling, instinctively reached for another source of information. Instagram. I scrolled through my feed, a pit forming in my stomach, and there it was. Serena, Lucas's sister, had just posted an hour ago. A vibrant, sun-drenched photo popped up. Lucas, undeniably him, standing on a luxurious cruise ship deck, his arm draped possessively around a young blonde woman. I recognized her immediately, Sophia, his new project assistant. They were holding champagne flutes, toasting the camera, their smiles impossibly wide and carefree against the backdrop of an endless turquoise sea. The caption screamed betrayal. Hashtag new beginnings, hashtag Caribbean dreams, with my amazing brother, at Lucas Mitchell, and Sophia. New beginnings. The words hit me like a physical blow. A new beginning for him, while my world had just imploded. Julian's raspy voice.com, but filled with an unspoken understanding, broke through my shock. His mother, Alina, is there too. They said she needed a break, but I've seen her in photos. She looks well enough, dancing by the pool, sipping cocktails. He pointed to another image on Serena's profile. Alina, Lucas's mother, radiating joy. By the ship's pool, looking anything but someone who needed a break from caring for her frail, aging husband. They planned this at least 3 months ago, Julian continued, his voice low and steady. Sophia's been calling here often, asking for Lucas, even when you weren't home. Every word Julian uttered was a shard of glass, twisting deeper into my already wounded heart. I had spent the last month meticulously planning a surprise anniversary dinner, agonizing over the perfect gifts, envisioning the moment Lucas would walk through the door and see everything, while I was pouring my heart into celebrating our decade together. He was meticulously planning his escape, orchestrating a lavish betrayal with another woman. The sheer audacity, the cold-blooded calculation of it all, left me breathless. The money, I whispered. a chilling thought suddenly cutting through my days. With trembling hands, I opened my banking app, the familiar interface now feeling alien and terrifying. I scrolled through recent transactions, my eyes darting frantically across the screen. There it was. A massive withdrawal, dated just 4 days ago. A sum that made my stomach lurch. $85,000. Our entire savings. The money we had meticulously saved, dollar by dollar, over years. The money we were putting aside for a plot of land in Tuscany, where I dreamed of building a small, rustic studio, painting the rolling vineyards under the Italian sun. It was all gone. He took it all. Julian nodded, a grim understanding in his eyes. They've been doing it to me for years, he said, his voice laced with a quiet bitterness. Taking my pension, cutting corners on my medical care. This room, he gestured around the elegant yet strangely empty living room, is mine, but they always told me it was Lucas's, saying I wasn't capable of managing anything anymore. They treated me like a senile old man, a burden to be tolerated. He recounted instances of neglect, his heating turned off on chilly Carmel nights, his special dietary needs ignored, his medications often forgotten for days. They thought I didn't notice, he stated, his voice gaining a surprising strength. But I did. I've been documenting everything. I knew this day would come. Then, he reached beneath the cushion of his armchair, producing a thick, worn leather folder. Inside, to my astonishment, was an old, formally drafted will. This, he explained, is my real will. Not the one Lucas and Alina believe exists. His eyes met mine, a flicker of something resembling a smirk on his face. I've bequeathed the bulk of my assets to a charitable foundation dedicated to preventing elder abuse, and a smaller, but significant, portion to the kind woman who would care for me in my final days. He looked at me, a subtle, knowing smile playing on his lips. It seems that's you, Anya. Lucas never knew I'd changed it, not truly. He also detailed his hidden assets. Substantial offshore bank accounts. A collection of priceless art pieces, meticulously catalogued and stored in a secret vault in San Francisco. And even the true ownership of this very villa, which was held under one of his private holding companies, completely untraceable by Lucas or Alina. The scale of their deceit, not just towards me but towards Julian, was staggering. It wasn't just a ruined anniversary or a broken heart. It was a calculated act of abandonment and systematic exploitation. The painting of my life, once so vibrant and full of promise, had been brutally slashed, leaving behind a jagged raw wound. But in that moment, looking at Julian, a new resolve began to take shape. This wasn't just about my pain anymore. It was about justice. The raw humiliation and searing pain of betrayal, which had threatened to overwhelm me just moments ago, now hardened into an unyielding resolve. It wasn't the kind of resolve that manifested in angry shouts or dramatic confrontations. Instead, it was a cold, steely determination. Like the meticulous focus I brought to a complex painting, each brushstroke placed with deliberate intent. No more useless tears, no more desperate pleas. Only a fierce, burning commitment to justice, forged in the crucible of their deceit. Julian, I said, my voice steady, my gaze meeting his surprisingly piercing eyes, we won't let them get away with this. Not with me, and certainly not with you. I rose from the kitchen chair, the metallic taste of betrayal still on my tongue. The kitchen, usually a hub of warmth and inviting aromas, felt desolate, stripped bare of joy, just like my marriage. There was no food save for the few cherished ingredients I'd brought for our anniversary dinner. My artistic sensibility, usually dedicated to beauty, now turned to practicality. I began to methodically clean the counter, the sink, clearing away the lingering crumbs of their hurried departure. Then, I set about preparing a simple but comforting meal from the ingredients I'd brought: grilled lobster tails and a fresh organic salad. A far cry from the elaborate anniversary feast I had envisioned, but a defiant act of self-care. It was a tangible assertion that we, Julian and I, deserved better than the scraps they had left us, as we ate at the small kitchen table. The silence broken only by the gentle clinking of cutlery, Julian began to recount his life story, a narrative of quiet dignity slowly eroded by insidious greed. He had once been a renowned jeweler in San Francisco, a master craftsman whose exquisite pieces graced the necks and fingers of the city's elite. He spoke of his passion for collecting rare gems, a lifelong pursuit that had culminated in a priceless collection he meticulously catalogued. But after Alina, Lucas's mother, passed away, Lucas and Alina had begun their subtle campaign of manipulation. They systematically convinced him he was growing confused, senile, unable to manage his affairs. Subtly isolating him from his friends and independent life, Julian then retrieved a small, worn notebook from deep within the folds of his armchair cushion. Its pages were filled with meticulous, albeit somewhat shaky, handwritten notes, a damning chronicle of his decline orchestrated by them. He detailed suspicious financial transfers from his personal accounts, disguised as care expenses or home improvements that never materialized. He recorded mysteriously disconnected phone lines whenever he tried to contact old friends or independent financial advisors. There were entries about crucial doctor's appointments being cancelled without his knowledge, leaving him without vital medication or proper care. "They thought I was just a senile old fool," he said, his voice laced with a quiet bitterness. "Someone to be tolerated until I was gone. But I documented everything. Every penny, every slight, every cancelled appointment. I knew this day would come." He then presented a thick, formally drafted will, tucked inside a weathered leather folder. "This," he explained, his eyes sharp, "is my real will. Not the one Lucas and Alina believe exists." A faint, knowing smile played on his lips. "I updated it discreetly after their manipulative behavior became undeniable. The bulk of my assets are now bequeathed to a charitable foundation dedicated to preventing elder abuse. Ensuring my legacy truly helps those in need. And a smaller, but significant portion is designated for the kind woman who would care for me in my final days." Demonstrating true compassion where my own family failed, he looked directly at me, his smile deepening slightly. "It seems that's you, Anya." Lucas never knew I'd changed it, not truly. He also revealed his meticulously guarded hidden assets, substantial offshore bank accounts, a valuable collection of rare art pieces carefully catalogued and stored in a secret, climate-controlled vault in San Francisco, and even the true ownership of this very villa, which was held under one of his private holding companies, making it legally untraceable by Lucas or Alina. The sheer scale of Julian's foresight and their blind arrogance was breathtaking. The very next morning, armed with a new sense of purpose, I contacted Eleanor Vance, Carmel's most respected and formidable attorney. Julian had insisted I speak to her, describing her as a woman who cuts through nonsense like a laser. She was a stern woman in her 60s, with immaculate silver hair pulled back in a severe bun and penetrating green eyes that seemed to miss nothing. "Welcome to the club of those betrayed by the Mitchells," she said with a dry, knowing smile. Shaking my hand with a firm grip, Julian spoke highly of you. He trusts you implicitly. We immediately began working tirelessly in Julian's study, a room Alina had tried to convert into a meditation space, but still retained Julian's heavy mahogany desk. I helped Eleanor meticulously organize the mountain of evidence Julian had amassed over the years, the detailed bank statements with highlighted suspicious transfers, encrypted emails and text messages that Julian had secretly archived, even recordings of phone conversations where Lucas and Alina discussed his burdensome care. My background as a painter, with its emphasis on attention to detail, composition, and visual storytelling, proved invaluable. I created clear, compelling timelines, mapped out the flow of stolen funds, and visually represented the systematic nature of their financial exploitation and emotional manipulation. Eleanor was visibly impressed, noting how my artistic eye translated into forensic precision. We need to create a strong, undeniable impression of Julian's rapid decline, Eleanor advised, her gaze sharp, something that aligns with your calls and texts to Serena. This will be crucial for the legal narrative. I nodded, understanding the strategic theatricality required. I utilized my artistic understanding of composition, lighting, and visual impact to transform Julian's bedroom into a makeshift home hospital. I sourced realistic prop medical equipment from a local film prop company, a non-functional oxygen tank, monitors with detachable leads, empty medication vials with convincing labels. I carefully arranged the equipment for maximum visual impact. The oxygen tank prominently displayed, a heart monitor positioned by the bed, various monitoring devices arranged on the bedside table. I even made the bed with hospital-grade sheets Eleanor had provided, completing the illusion of serious medical intervention. Then came the photographic evidence. I took close-up photos of Julian, making him appear frail and pale, his hair disheveled, using subtle makeup to accentuate the hollows of his face and the shadows under his eyes. Julian, despite his true mental sharpness, delivered a convincing performance of weakness, his eyes fluttering, his breath deliberately shallow. I then took photos of myself, looking utterly exhausted and overwhelmed. With no makeup, tousled hair, and wearing an oversized sweater that made me appear smaller, more vulnerable. I captured images of myself seemingly asleep in the uncomfortable chair beside his bed, and others of me preparing medications with a worried expression. "Perfect," Julian whispered, reviewing the images. "Who's our target for these?" "Lucas's sister, Serena," I replied. "According to your phone, she's the only one who's texted to check on you since they left." I crafted a carefully worded message to accompany the photos. "Julian had a difficult night. Fever spiked to 102. Managing pain as best I can. We'll keep you updated." It was direct, clinical, but carried an undertone of desperate concern that would trigger either guilt or, at the very least, interest. Serena's reply came within minutes. "Oh no, poor Uncle Julian, keep me posted." The hook was set. Our plan unfolded with precision. I began calling Lucas every few hours, leaving urgent, carefully controlled panic in my voicemails. "Lucas, you need to come home. Julian's condition is worsening faster than expected. The hospice nurse is concerned about his breathing. I really need your support right now." Every call was secretly recorded on an app Julian had prepared, a testament to his foresight. Concurrently, Julian and I proceeded with the critical legal maneuvers. We visited his longtime bank, a familiar institution where he'd been a customer for over 30 years. His manager, Mr. Collins, a sympathetic friend, was unknowingly integral to our plan. In the privacy of Mr. Collins's office, Julian, with a deliberately shaky hand, officially transferred control of his hidden assets' offshore accounts, valuable art, and even the villa's true ownership to a new series of trusts, with me as the designated trustee. He also signed the final amendments to his will, explicitly disinheriting Lucas and Elena due to their documented neglect and exploitation. Mr. Collins subtly mentioned, "Your stepson was in last week, asking about your accounts." I reminded him. He lacked proper authorization. Julian offered a thin, knowing smile. Always planning ahead, that boy. Over the next 2 days, a steady stream of Julian's old neighbors, genuinely concerned, visited the villa. I warmly invited them in, sharing updates on Julian's health and subtly mentioning Lucas and Elena's unexpected cruise. Each visit yielded more stories of Lucas and Elena's long-standing neglect and callous disregard for Julian's well-being, which I meticulously documented, building a formidable body of witness statements for our case. The climax arrived on Saturday morning, with a video call from Serena. I had meticulously prepared. Julian was positioned in bed, surrounded by the prop medical equipment, a non-functioning oxygen cannula in his nostrils. I had disheveled my own hair, smudged subtle shadows under my eyes, and pinched my cheeks, to create a stressed, flushed appearance. When I answered, Serena's face, sun-kissed from the Caribbean, filled the screen, her eyes wide with concern. "Oh, Anya, you look terrible. Is everything okay?" "Just managing," I replied, then turned the camera to Julian, who delivered an Oscar-worthy performance of semi-consciousness, his breathing deliberately labored. "Uncle Julian," Serena called out, her voice trembling. "It's Serena, can you hear me?" Julian's eyes fluttered weakly. "Serena," he whispered, "is that you, sweetheart?" Serena's concern seemed genuine, but her next words revealed her true priorities. "Should we come home early? Is he going to make it until Monday?" I turned the camera back to my exhausted face. "It's hard to say. The hospice nurse thinks his systems are shutting down." Serena quickly interjected, "If you want to say goodbye, let me talk to Lucas and Mom. The thing is, these tickets were non-refundable, and Mom's been so stressed lately." I nodded understandingly, battling genuine disgust. "Of course. It's just that Julian keeps asking for Lucas in his more lucid moments." Serena promised to call Lucas and Elena as soon as they returned from their shore excursion. Julian, after the call, sat up, removed the cannula, and gave a satisfied smile, tinged with genuine sadness. "My family," he murmured, weighing their cruise tickets against saying goodbye to me. I knew it would happen exactly like this. On Sunday morning, I sensed a profound shift. Julian's real decline had begun. I called Diane, his hospice nurse, who confirmed he has hours, maybe a day at most. With Eleanor, we finalized the last documents. Julian, summoning his remaining strength, recorded a powerful video testimony, speaking directly to the camera. "Anya has shown me more dignity in 4 days than my family did in 4 years, he stated clearly. "She is the only one who earned the right to benefit from what I spent a lifetime building." He spoke with calm precision, detailing years of neglect and his decision to leave his estate to me. Julian passed away peacefully in my arms that night, his hand growing cool in mine. As I read to him from his favorite book, there were no last-minute revelations, no deathbed confessions, just the quiet passing of a man who had finally found peace. Lucas and Alina returned on Monday morning, tanned and beaming, their arms laden with duty-free bags and tacky souvenirs. They burst through the front door, their laughter echoing through the once silent villa, a jarring cacophony against the quiet grief I held. I stood in the center of the living room, dressed in a simple, elegant black dress, a stark contrast to their vacation glow. "Welcome home," I said, my voice calm, almost chillingly so. Lucas's cheerful smile faltered as he saw me, then registered the empty armchair where Julian usually sat. "Enya, what's with the funeral get-up? Where's Julian? Is he napping?" Alina pushed past him, dropping her designer handbag onto the console table with a thud. "Julian passed away Saturday night," I stated quietly. The shopping bags slipped from Lucas's hands, clattering to the floor. Hannah, who had followed them in, took a nervous step back towards the door, as if sensing the impending storm. "What do you mean, passed away?" Alina demanded, as if I had merely used the wrong word. "He died peacefully in his sleep around midnight," I continued, maintaining my composure. "The funeral service was yesterday afternoon. Many of your neighbors attended, along with Julian's friends from his jeweler days. Quite a lovely turnout, actually." Lucas's face cycled through shock, disbelief, and then, most tellingly, cold calculation. "You held the funeral without us, without his family." "His family was invited," I replied, gesturing to the pale blue note on the coffee table. "I left multiple messages about his declining condition. You chose not to respond." Serena stepped forward, her face pale beneath her tan. "I told you about that call, Lucas. Uncle Julian looked really bad." Lucas impatiently waved her off. This is unbelievable. We need to sit down." "Yes," I agreed, "we do." I gestured to the living room. They filed in silently, no one daring to sit in Julian's empty armchair, which stood like a silent accusation. "There are some things you need to know," I said, picking up the cream-colored envelope. "Julian left this letter to be read to you upon your return. Did he change his will?" Alina interjected bluntly. "Is that what this is about?" I met her eyes directly. "Perhaps you should hear his words first." I unfolded the letter and began reading Julian's message. His profound disappointment flowed through my voice. The holidays spent alone. The doctor's appointments cancelled for convenience. The overheard comments about waiting for the old man to die. As I read, I watched their reactions. Elena's face hardened defensively. Lucas fidgeted, avoiding eye contact. Serena looked increasingly uncomfortable. "The greatest pain in life," I read, "is not illness or even death, but the realization that those you loved saw you only as an obligation, a task to be managed, an inconvenience to be tolerated." When I finished, a heavy silence filled the room. Hannah, clearly wishing to be anywhere else, stared at her feet. Finally, Lucas cleared his throat. "Look, Dad was confused at the end. His medication, Julian, was perfectly lucid." I interrupted, my voice sharp. "In fact, he made a video statement you might want to see." "This is ridiculous," Alina declared. "Some end-of-life ramblings from a sick old man don't change the legal realities. Lucas is his next of kin." "Actually," I said, standing up, "there's more you should see." I led them to the dining room, where I'd arranged the evidence files. Lucas's eyes widened as he took in the meticulous documentation laid out in chronological order. "What is all this?" he demanded. "Evidence," I replied simply, "of financial exploitation, medical neglect, and abandonment." I opened the first folder, revealing bank statements with highlighted transfers. Julian kept detailed records of every dollar taken from his accounts for supposed care expenses that were never provided. Alina snatched up one of the statements. He gave us that money. We were caring for him. By leaving him alone for your anniversary, with inadequate medication, no food in the refrigerator, and the heat turned down to 62 degrees. I asked, opening another folder containing the timeline of their departure preparations. There are statements from 6 different neighbors who witnessed his neglect. And then there's this. I pressed play on the tablet, and Julian's video testimony began. His calm, articulate description of years of mistreatment silenced even Elena's protests. Lucas's face grew increasingly pale as Julian described specific incidents, medications diluted, appointments cancelled, disparaging comments made when they thought he couldn't hear. This is all a setup. Lucas finally sputtered, jabbing a finger toward me. She manipulated a dying man. The doorbell rang before I could respond. Perfect timing. Eleanor stood on the doorstep, Notary Thomas beside her. Am I interrupting? She asked, with professional coolness. Not at all, I replied. The family has just returned and was reviewing Julian's final message. Excellent. Then I can proceed with the official notification. Eleanor placed her briefcase on the dining table and removed several documents. As executive of Julian Harmon's estate, I'm here to inform you of the provisions of his final will and testament. Lucas straightened, composing himself. A smug smile began to form on his lips. Fine, let's get to the point. Eleanor adjusted her glasses. The will is quite straightforward. Julian Harmon has left the entirety of his estate to Anya, with provisions for substantial donations to several elder abuse prevention organizations. The stunned silence that followed was broken by Elena's shrill voice. That's impossible. We're his family. The will explicitly cites abandonment and neglect as reasons for disinheritance. Eleanor continued calmly. It has been properly witnessed, notarized, and filed with the court. Mr. Harmon was examined by 2 separate physicians who certified his mental competence at the time of signing. Lucas's smugness evaporated. This is fraud. We'll contest it. You're welcome to try, Eleanor replied, unfazed. However, given the extensive documentation of neglect, the video testimony, and witness statements, I would advise against it. You'd only be spending money you don't have. What do you mean, money we don't have? Alina demanded. Eleanor exchanged a glance with me before continuing. The properties you currently occupy, including your primary residence, belong to the Harmon Family Trust, which is now under Anya's control as trustee. Furthermore, the investment accounts you've been drawing from have been frozen pending audit for potential financial abuse. Lucas's face drained of all color. That's not possible. The house is mine. Dad promised. Julian promised nothing, I interjected. You assumed. There's a difference. The implications were sinking in. Lucas had spent their savings on the cruise, counting on his inheritance to cover their mounting debts. The house they lived in wasn't his to sell or borrow against. What about our college funds? Serena asked in a small voice. Grandpa set those up for us. Lucas couldn't meet his sister's eyes. Eleanor answered gently. Julian provided funds to your father for that purpose several years ago. However, those accounts were never established. Serena turned to Lucas, horror dawning on her face. You spent our college money. The family erupted into accusations and denials. Hannah quietly slipped out the front door, escaping the implosion. I let the chaos continue for a few minutes before stepping away to retrieve my suitcase from the bedroom. When I returned, Lucas followed me into the hallway, his demeanor completely transformed. "Anya, please," he begged, his voice breaking. "We can work this out. I made a mistake with Sophia. It didn't mean anything. We can start over. I'll change. I promise." I looked at this man I had once loved, seeing him clearly, perhaps for the first time. Behind the handsome features and practiced charm was someone who had never truly cared for me, or anyone but himself. Calmly, I removed my wedding ring and placed it in his palm, followed by the keys to our apartment. "You left him to die," I said quietly. "Now you get nothing, including me." I walked toward the door, suitcase in hand. Lucas's pleas turned to threats as he followed me. "You won't get away with this. I'll fight it in court. You manipulated a sick old man." At the doorway, I turned back briefly. Everything was done legally. "You taught me one valuable lesson in our marriage, Lucas. Always keep receipts." I stepped outside into the bright November sunshine. Behind me, I could hear Lucas's continued protests and Elena's angry voice demanding Eleanor explain how this could happen. But those voices were already fading, becoming part of a past I was leaving behind. Eleanor had arranged for a room at a quiet hotel while I figured out my next steps. As I placed my suitcase in the trunk of my car, Mrs. Peterson appeared on her porch across the street. She gave me a knowing nod and a small wave. I waved back, feeling a surprising lightness despite the emotional weight of the past few days. I sat on the white sand of Carmel, listening to the rhythmic crash of the waves, each one washing away a piece of my past. Julian's final gift wasn't just financial security, though that certainly would help me rebuild my life. The true gift was the clarity and strength I'd found while helping him find justice. In caring for him, I'd not only helped bring peace to a man who deserved better, but also rediscovered my own resilience and purpose. I realized I possessed an inner power I never knew existed, a determination that had been obscured by years of quiet manipulation. I will use this new beginning to not just rebuild my life, but to honor Julian's memory in a meaningful way. I envision establishing a community art center, perhaps a gallery with workshops, where I can share my passion for painting and mentor other women. It will be a space where creativity thrives, where women can find their voice and their independence, just as I found mine. This center will offer classes for aspiring artists, provide a safe space for artistic expression, and, most importantly, be a testament to the power of resilience and the pursuit of justice. I will live a life that is full, authentic, and free. From the shadows of deceit and manipulation, Julian's greatest gift wasn't money. It was freedom from a toxic relationship. Freedom to find my inner strength, and freedom to paint a new future on my own canvas. I have broken free from a damaging past, discovered my intrinsic power, and am now poised to create a life of my own design. Julian found his peace. Now it is my turn to do the same. I won't look back. I will only look forward, to new canvases, new inspirations, and new beginnings. Thank you for staying with this story until the end. My favorite moment was when Julian shared his cherished port wine. Saved for an anniversary, he never reached such bittersweet dignity in that glass, which scene touched your heart most deeply. I treasure every comment, sharing your thoughts.